Hello friends, in this video I will explain you fifth chapter. So chapter name here given. So as you can see on your screen, here it is designing organizational structure, authority and control. Okay, so when we design the structure of the organization, then at that time we should consider about authority and control also. Means what are different authorities and how to control people working in the organization. Okay, so about that I'm going to explain in this video. So first of all, let me select okay. So here first given authority. Here now you can see authority, how and why vertical differentiation occur. So in this topic given authority, what is authority, how and why vertical differentiation occurs. Means authority, it is related to vertical differentiation. So as you can see here, authority is the power to hold people accountable for their actions and to directly influence what they do and how they do it. So it is about holding people accountable. Authority, it is a type of power which holds people accountable for what they do. Means it is the type of power. Authority is a type of power which hold people accountable for their actions. Okay, and it also influences what they do and how they do it. Next here given, here it is given emergence. So here emergence of the hierarchy. So why and how hierarchy emerges in the organization. So here given an organization's hierarchy begins to emerge when managers find it more and more difficult to coordinate and motivate employees. When there comes the problem of managing, okay, and means coordinating different employees and motivating them, then organization tries to develop hierarchy so that managers can now manage or coordinate employees and motivate employees. So next given here, an organization does two things to improve its ability. So if I a little bit zoom, then it will be better to see, because now size may be a little bit smaller right now it is going to be clear. Okay, so here an organization does two things to improve its ability to control. Okay, organization does two things. So what are these two things? Means that is coordinate and motivate its members. Okay, means an organization does two things to, okay, there it is too much noise, I think it is coming right now, so we can hold for a moment, then after I will start again. Okay, let this pass, sorry for the interruption. Now let's start. An organization does two things to improve its ability to control. So coordinate and motivate its members. So for improving ability to control, so how organization can control its member, and that is coordinating and motivating. So the first way it increases, so first given by coordinating. Now you can see here, first given by coordinating and second given by motivating. Okay, by coordinating and motivating an organization improve its control over its members. So first given, it increases the number of managers it uses to monitor. So now when this process start means when an organization tries to coordinate and motivate its members, then in that case uh, more managers will be required to monitor, evaluate and reward employees. And second given, it increases the number of levels in its managerial hierarchy. Okay, two things. For if number of managers increases, then that is common thing that if numbers are going to increase, then in that case managerial hierarchy will also increase, thereby making the hierarchy of authority taller. Okay, so with increase in the number and hierarchy of managers, now the authority will become taller. Hierarchy of authority will become taller. Then here you can see increase in both the number of managers and the level of management increases vertical differentiation and gives the organization direct face-to-face control over its members. Managers personally control their subordinates. So what is the benefit of increasing the number of managers and the level of management? Now you can see when the number of managers increase, then in that case vertical differentiation also increase. Okay, so level of management increases vertical differentiation, and which gives the organization direct face to face. With increase in the vertical differentiation, there will be direct face to face control over its members. Managers personally control their subordinates. Size and height limitation. So here you can see size and height limitation given. So size and height limitation of hierarchy of authority. So now here given an organization in which the hierarchy has many levels relative to the size of the organization is a taller organization. So in which case we are going to say that the organization is a taller organization when the hierarchy has many levels related to the size of the organization. If the size of the organization it is small and the hierarchy it is more, or then in that case we can say that the organization is tall organization. And when we can say that the organization is flat organization, we can say that the organization is flat when you see here an organization that has few levels in its hierarchy. When the level of hierarchy, number of hierarchy it is less, in that case we can say that that organization is flat organization. So organizations seem to actively restrain the increase in the number of managers and hierarchy levels as they grow and differentiate. Okay, here given organizations seem to actively means organization restrain. Organizations don't want to increase the number of managers and hierarchical levels. Why? So it is because, now you can see here written, this is because many significant problems arise as the organizational hierarchy becomes taller and taller. So many different types of problems arise when organizational hierarchy becomes taller. So what are those different problems? So now you see here the next heading given, problems with tall hierarchy. So what are different problems? The first problem, it is communication problems. Having too many. So here it is having too many organizations, too many hierarchical levels. You can see here having too many hierarchical levels may hinder communication. So whenever so many hierarchical levels, then that may decrease the communication. So how that can hinder communication? As the chain of commands lengthens, communication between managers at the top and bottom of the hierarchy takes longer. So if hierarchy it is tall, then in that case the distance in between the bottom level manager and the top level manager will increase, and that may cause different types of communication problems. So here decision slows. Now here you can see here written decision making slows down, and the slowdown hurts the performance of organization that need to respond quickly to customers need or the actions of the competitors. Now you see here what happens. So when the hierarchy becomes taller, then in that case there are so many different types of problem of communication arise, and due to that problem of communication, here given decision making slows down. When there is communication problem, then decision making will slow down, and that slow down of decision making will hurt the performance of the organization. Okay, it means the organization will not be able to respond quickly to the customers need or the action of the competitors. Then here you can see written information becomes distorted as it flows up and down the hierarchy through many levels of management. And also one more disadvantage is that the problem with the tall hierarchy is that when information flows from top to bottom or from bottom to top, in case of tall hierarchy, then in that case the information distort, because in each as the information pass from one level to another level, there is distortion of information at each level. So the greater the number of levels, the greater will be distortions of the information. Okay, next problem given, motivation problems. When more authority and responsibility, here you can see yes, here given when more authority and responsibility are given to managers and employees, they are motivated to perform their organizational roles. Okay, when more responsibilities are there, then they are motivated. Other things being equal, if other things being equal, then if more responsibilities and authority are given to employees or managers, then in that case they are going to be motivated. And thus motivation in an organization with flat structure may be stronger. So since in case of flat organization, the levels are less, so managers and employees will be motivated as compared to tall organization. Next given, bureaucratic cost. So manager cost money, that's we know, because organizations uh, have to pay salary to managers. So the greater the number of managers and hierarchical levels, the greater the bureaucratic cost will be there. Okay, because greater the number of levels, the greater will be the number of managers, and that will cost money. So that's why here written bureaucratic cost, that is the cost associated with running and operating an organization will increase. Okay, if there are greater number of levels. Next here given the Parkinson's law problem. So what is Parkinson's law problem? Growth in the number of managers and hierarchical levels is controlled by two principles. You see, if organizations are left as it is, then in that case number of levels and number of managers are going to increase continuously. So what are different factors which control the number of levels and the number of managers in the organization? So the first given, an official want to multiply subordinates, not rivals. So now you can see there is an official want, means managers want to multiply subordinates. Okay, they want to increase the number of subordinates, but do not want to increase the number of rivals, means number of colleagues. And second given, officials make work for one another. So whenever there are greater number of officials or greater number of managers, then in that case they are going to make work for one another. So if there is no work, then they are going to produce the work for one another. So how they can do? By uh, monitoring one another. That type of problem may cause. So these things, so these two reasons. So these two factors control the growth of number of managers and hierarchical levels. The first is an official wants to multiply subordinates, not rivals. That is the first principle of Parkinson's law. The second principle, that officials make work for one another. So these two principles will decide what will be the number of hierarchical levels and what will be the number of managers. Okay. Now, managers value their rank, grade, or status in the hierarchy. Here you can see managers value the rank, grade, or status in the hierarchy. The fewer managers of their hierarchical level and the greater the number of managers below them, the larger is their empire and the higher their status. So what can managers value? Their rank. They value. There it is the question, there it is the matter of a status quo. Okay. They value their rank, they value their grade or status. So if there is greater number of subordinates, okay, then in that case their empire, means the empire of that particular manager will be larger and the higher will be their status. So manager seeks to increase the number of their subordinates, causing the hierarchy to become taller and taller. Okay, so this is the reason, means if there are greater number of subordinates, then there will be in higher their status. Okay, then that's why to increase their status, managers try to increase the number of subordinates, and which causes taller and taller hierarchy. Here, as the number of levels increases, managers must spend more of their time monitoring and controlling the actions and behaviors of their subordinates and thus create unnecessary work for themselves. So now you see what here it is given. So as the number of levels increases, when number of levels increases in the organization, increase, then in that way what happens, managers must spend more time, means greater the number of levels, the greater will be the time the managers will have to devote for monitoring their subordinates. Okay, so that type of problem it arises, and it is unnecessary work for monitoring subordinates, or monitoring their behavior, their actions. So if number of levels are going to be less, then in that case the monitoring activities will be less, and less time will be devoted for monitoring. So this is Parkinson's law. This is what Parkinson's law, because more and more numbers of managers, or you can say more and more numbers of subordinates, will cause higher requirement of time for monitoring. So again I am reading, as the number, from here read, so this is about Parkinson's law. As the number of levels increases, managers must spend more of their time monitoring and controlling the actions and behaviors of their subordinates and thus create unnecessary work for themselves. Okay, by increasing the number of subordinates, they create unnecessary work for themselves. So next heading given, ideal number of hierarchical levels. So in the organization, what should be the ideal number of hierarchical levels? Okay, so this is also known as the minimum. This is also known as the minimum chain of command. Now you see what it is. Managers should base the decision to employ an extra manager on the difference between the value added by the last manager employed and the cost of the last manager employed. So now you see on what basis the number of hierarchical levels should be. Okay, or you can say what should be the minimum chain of command or minimum or number of levels in the organizations. So here given, so that decision, that what should be the number, is going to be decided by the cost for employing the last manager, and the value created by the last manager. You should see the difference. If the cost for employing the last manager, it is greater than the value created by that last manager, then in that case the organization should not employ that manager. And if the value created, it is greater as compared to the cost for employing the last manager, then in that case the organization should employ that last manager. So here given, according to the principle of minimum chain of command, an organization should choose the minimum number of hierarchical levels consistent with its goals and the environment in which it exists. So this principle says that the organization should choose the minimum number of hierarchical levels. So minimum number of hierarchical levels consistent with its goal, means according to the goals and the environmental condition in which the organization is present. According to that, the organization should choose the minimum number of hierarchical levels. The span of control. So span of control given here, the number of subordinates each manager directly manages. So what is span of control? So the number of subordinates each manager directly manages. Okay, means, or you can say that what is the number, like a number of subordinates directed by a particular manager, that we can say that is span of control. Size and limits of a manager's span of control is determined by the inability to exercise adequate supervision over the activities of subordinates as they grow in number. You see, what should be the span of control, that is going to be decided by the inability, means inability to exercise adequate supervision. Means if the manager is not able to supervise, or you can say not able to control the activities of subordinates, then in that case the span of control should decrease. Okay. So a manager's ability to directly supervise and control subordinates behavior is limited by two factors. So how many subordinates should be, indirect span of control of a particular manager is going to be decided by two factors. The first factor here, it is given the complexity and the interrelated or interrelatedness, here it is crossed. So here given interrelatedness of subordinates task, means how the tasks of subordinates are interrelated. If the tasks of subordinates are interrelated, then the span of control can be increased. But if the tasks are different, okay, if tasks are not related for subordinates, then in that case the span of control should decrease. Here it is written, when subordinates tasks are complex and dissimilar, a manager's span of control needs to be small. That's what I say. If tasks are routine and similar, so that all subordinates perform the same task, the span of control can be widened. So it depends on the complexity of the task. If similar tasks are performed by the subordinates, then we can increase the number of subordinates, or we can increase the span of control of that particular manager. And if subordinate tasks are complex and dissimilar, then in that case we should decrease. Okay, we should decrease the number of subordinates directly supervised by that particular manager. So next here given control factors affecting shape of the hierarchy. What are different factors affecting the shape of the hierarchy? First given, level of horizontal differentiation. So shape of the hierarchy is going to be shaped by the level of horizontal differentiation. What are different levels of horizontal differentiation? Second given, the level of decentralization. Third given, the level of standardization. And the fourth given, strength of informal ties and relationships that exist between organized members. So these are four factors which will affect the shape of the hierarchy. So first given, horizontal differentiation. Now let's go into detail. Horizontal differentiation leads to the emergence of a specialized subunit functions or divisions. Means why we do a horizontal differentiation? So horizontal differentiation exists for creating specialized subunits, and those subunits are functions or divisions, and each function, department or division has its own hierarchy. So inside each function, division or department, there is hierarchy. Horizontal differentiation is the principal way in which an organization retains control over employees when it cannot increase the number of levels in the organizational hierarchy. So horizontal differentiation, it is about differentiating. It means grouping similar people into a group or a unit or in a function to increase the control over the members of the organization. Like the organization as a whole, each function follows the principle of minimum chain of control. Now again, here, like the organization as a whole, the function means inside the function there is also the hierarchy. That hierarchy also follows the same principle of minimum chain of command when designing its hierarchy. It means the level or the number of levels in the hierarchy should be in such a way that it should be consistent with the or you can say that it should be minimum with the okay, wait a minute. Should be inconsistent with the environment, you can say inconsistent with the environment. So each function chooses the lowest number of hierarchical levels it can operate with effectively and achieve its goal. So whatever it is, the minimum number of levels by which by using that the organization can work effectively and achieve its goal. So that the minimum number of hierarchical levels should the organization should choose. Next given, centralization, the level of decentralization. This is the second factor which affects the number of hierarchy. So what it is given here, the hierarchy becomes taller. So now you can see here the hierarchy becomes taller and the number of managers increases, communication and coordination problem grow. So that's I already explained, with increase in the number of hierarchy and increase in the number of managers, communication problem grow. Managers begin to spend more and more time monitoring and supervising their subordinates and less time planning and goal setting, and organizational effectiveness suffers. So now you see, if there is greater number of hierarchy, then what happens? So managers spend more and more time on monitoring subordinates, and they spend less time on planning and goal setting. The solution to this problem is the decentralized authority, because now less direct managerial supervision is needed, and we can overcome this problem by decentralizing the authority. So now here given, decentralization does not eliminate the need for many hierarchical levels. It does not eliminate the need for hierarchical levels. So what it does in a large and complex organization, it does not eliminate the number of hierarchical levels. So what it does, that control work and activities, it can assist even a relatively taller structure to more flexible in its responses to changes in the external environment and reduce the amount of direct supervision needed within a subunit. So what it does means, what decentralization does, it does not eliminate the need for many hierarchical levels in a large and complex organization that has to control work activities among many subunits. So what it does, it increases it increases the response, or you can say how uh, organizational members respond to environmental change. So that responses are going to increase. Okay, these responses are going to be quick, so that organization can work in coordination, or you can say in accordance with the environment. Third factor which affect or which shape the what it was which affect the shape of the hierarchy, it is standardization. So standardized managers can also gain control over employees by standardizing their behavior and making their actions predictable. So now standardization means making the behavior of employees predictable, and how that can be done. The use of here it is given. The use of standardization reduces the need for personal control by managers and extra level of hierarchy, because rules and so standard operating procedures substitute for direct supervision. Here managers don't convince when a standardized system is used by manager to save the behaviors and actions of organizational members, then in that case managers use rules and standard operating procedures to substitute their for direct supervision. So they reduce the need for face-to-face contact. Okay, they start to use more indirect ways. Indirect ways are just like using rules, standard rules, and standard operating procedures. Subordinates, now here given, subordinates tasks become increasingly standardized and controlled by means of rules and norms. The amount of supervision required lessens, and a manager's span of control can be increased. Here organizations have become increasingly standardized. Okay, subordinates tasks, and so whatever tasks are performed by subordinates, so those tasks are going to be standardized and controlled by means of rules and norms. So managers span of control can be increased, because less time will be required for monitoring subordinates. Next, given principle of bureaucracy. So what is bureaucracy? You see here, what is bureaucracy? Bureaucracy is a form of organizational structure. What is that? Bureaucracy is a type of organizational structure in which people can be held accountable for their actions, because they are required to act in accordance with well specified and agreed upon rules and standard operating procedures. So here bureaucracy is a type of organizational structure in which people can be held accountable, means in which people are held accountable for their actions, because they are required to act. And in bureaucratic structure, people are required to act in accordance with the well specified rules and standard operating procedures. So they are not required to work in opposition to the agreed upon rules and standard operating procedures. They must work according to rules and standard operating procedures only. So first principle given, principle 1, here you can see principle of bureaucracy is found on the concept of rational legal authority. Here it is found on rational legal authority. So what it is rational legal authority? So rational legal authority is the authority a person possesses because of his or her position in an organization. So according means whatever position a particular person occupies in the organization, that position will give that particular person the authority, you can say the power. Okay, to work. So that's why here given rational legal authority is the authority a person possesses because of his or her position in an organization. In a bureaucracy, obedience is owed to a person not because of any personal qualities that he or she might possess, but because of the level of authority and responsibility that is associated with the organizational position the person occupies. So here it is not about the qualities the person possesses. So the power it comes from the the position at which he means whatever position he occupies. So that position give the him or her the authority, not his or her personal quality. So principle 2 given, organizational rules are held on the basis of technical competence. So now organizational rules are held on the basis of technical competence and not because of social status, kinship and heredity. Here whatever organization rules are given to different members of the organization, so those rules are uh, given on the basis of technical competence. In a well-defined hierarchy, now here in a well-defined hierarchy, roles are occupied by people who can do the job, not because who they are. Means whatever means at whatever hierarchy, roles are occupied by the people. So that role is given only because that person can do that work, only on that basis. Third given, third principle, a role's task, responsibility and decision making authority and its relationship to other roles in the organization should be clearly specified. So roles, task, responsibility, so whatever tasks means and decision making authority, so those all things are clearly specified. So what are different tasks are there, and how to make decisions in different situations, and how the authority of that particular person who occupies that role as means what are different relations he or she has with other members of the organization. So these all things are clearly specified by the rule. Fourth principle given here, the organization of role, the organization of roles in a bureaucracy is such that each lower office in the hierarchy is under the control and supervision of a higher office. Means in bureaucracy, or you can say in a bureaucratic structure, each level, each lower level is directly under the control or under the supervision of the higher authority or higher level. So fifth principle here given, this is fifth, this one it was fourth. So fifth one given, rules, standard operating procedures and norms should be used to control the behavior and the relationship among roles in an organization. It means whatever behavior and the relationships are there in the organization, those all things are controlled by rules and standard operating procedures and norms. Then principle 6 given, administrative acts, decisions and rules should be formulated and put in writing. So whatever administrative acts are there, whatever decision making procedures are there, and whatever rules are there, so those all things should be formulated and put in writing for bureaucratic structure. So now you see so many advantages are there for bureaucratic structure and so many disadvantages are there. So now you see I will explain what are different advantages. So first I will explain about the advantage, then after I will explain about disadvantage. So here it is given advantage. So first advantage, it lays out the ground rules for designing an organizational hierarchy that effectively controls interactions between organizational level. It means that it is clear cut what rules means how different levels are going to interact with each other. So that it was the first. Second, given bureaucracy is clear the specification of vertical authority and horizontal task relationships means there is no question about each person's role in the organization. Means everything here specified means here clear specification of vertical authority means whatever there is the vertical authority, so those all things are clearly specified. Okay, and horizontal task relationships are also specified clearly, so there is no question about each person's role in the organization, so there is no question. So what are different roles each person have, each person has to perform in the organization, everything is clarified by rules. Third, given individuals can be held accountable for what they do, so individuals can be held accountable what they do. Fourth, given it reduces the cost associated with monitoring the work of subordinates and increase integration within the organization. Since the behavior or the activities of organizational members are controlled by standard operating procedures, rules and norms, so there is less requirement of managers for monitoring those people. So that's why here the cost will be less in case of bureaucratic structure. So what are disadvantages? So many disadvantages are also there for bureaucratic structure. So first disadvantage, given managers fail to properly control the development of organizational hierarchy in the manner advocated by Weber. So according to Weber, so organizational structure in case of bureaucracy is clearly defined, means what it should be, but managers are not able to control the development of organizational hierarchy. Okay, so that is the problem with bureaucratic structure as it is. And what is the result of that increase in the bureaucratic level, or we say the level in the bureaucratic structure? These organizations often become very tall. So what happens? Managers are not able to control the number of levels, so that causes increase or you can say taller organization, centralized and inflexible. The organization becomes tall, centralized and inflexible. Decision making slows down, so if inflexible, then decision making will be slow. The organization begins to stagnate and bureaucratic cost increase because managers start to make work for each other. So since a greater number of levels are there, so managers start to produce, or you can start to mm, increase the number of work for each other. That it was the first. Second, given organizational members come to rely too much on rules and standard operating procedures to make decisions, and this over reliance makes them unresponsive to the needs of customers and other stakeholders. So we know that organization and the environment in which the organizations operate are dynamic. Okay, so the dynamic nature of the environment and the organization and the customer demands, dynamic nature of customer demands and the environment cause the organization to change fast, quickly, respond quickly, but bureaucratic structure cannot respond quickly. So one technique, so these are the disadvantage. So one technique that can be used to mitigate these problems in management. So whatever disadvantage of bureaucratic structure I explained, so one technique that can be used to overcome these problems, so that is given management by objective. Okay, management by objective. So what is management by objective? So here written, management by objective is a system of evaluating subordinates for their ability to achieve a specific organizational goals or performance standards and to meet operating budgets. Now you see here it is type of system in which the subordinates are evaluated for their ability to achieve a specific organizational goals by standards to meet operating budgets. Means under certain operating budgets, so how different subordinates uh, achieve organizational goal, that is means those things are evaluated by managers. So management by objectives involves three specific steps. So what are these three specific steps? So first, given specific goals and objectives are established at each level of the organization. Means at each level a particular specific goals and objectives are established. Then second, given it was the first. Second, here given managers and their subordinates together determine subordinates role. So whatever roles are given to subordinates, so those roles are decided or determined by managers and their subordinates together, not individually by manager. Okay, means whatever roles, whatever subordinates goals are going to be decided, so those goals are going to be decided by managers and subordinates together. Third, given managers and their subordinates periodically review the subordinates' progress towards meeting goals. That means only managers are not monitoring the subordinates' goal. Subordinates themselves also are monitoring their achievement of goals. So in this way, this is a better way to monitor subordinates. Next, here given the influence of the informal organization. So formally organization, we know there is a structure, certain standard operating procedure, rules and norms according to which organizational members are going to work. But apart from the formal structure, there is also informal structure in the organization also. Okay, which works parallel to the formal structure. So how that informal organization affect or how that informal organization influence the formal organization. So many here given many of the rules and norms that employees use to perform their tasks emerge out of informal interactions between people and not from the formal blueprint and rules established by managers. So many, and so how people in the organization behave and how they work. So they work in a way that that comes from behavior comes uh, from informal structure means informally how your organizational members interact with each other. So by that way, organizational works and activities are performed. So here given thus, while establishing a formal structure of interrelated roles, managers are also creating an informal social structure that affects behavior in ways that may be unintended. So when managers design a structure, when design the structure of the organization, then that a structure also causes to establish a type of informal structure, or can say informal organizational structure also, which affect the behavior of organizational members or the people working in the organization. Altering the formal structure often disrupts informal norms that make the organization work. So when we alter the formal structure, then we should keep in mind that formal structure will cause or that affect the informal norms also, which make the organization work. So whenever managers are going to alter the formal structure, then that manager should keep in mind how it is going to affect, means how the change in the formal structure will affect the informal structure. So formal hierarchical structure is the main mechanism of control, but managers should use the informal structure along with the formal one to allow people to work out solutions to their problems. Okay, okay, means the formal structure is a better way to control people's behavior in the organization, how they are going to coordinate with each other, how they are going to solve the problem of the organization. But managers also should keep in mind the informal structure, or you can say informal organizational structure, because people also behave according to informal structure to solve the problem of the organization. I think that is enough for today. So thank you.